Welcome to Real Life with Jenny. My name's Jenny Senapataratna. Grab your favorite drink, get yourself a snack, and we will get started. Today I have green tea peach flavored. Oh my goodness, so good. And I have a banana Laffy Taffy and some Nerds. Yes, not the healthiest snacks out there, but I'm telling you, they are yummy. So let's get real. This year and last year, I made one of those goals. And so I made goals for my nonfiction, for my fiction books, and I succeeded them, and it was great, and I had so much fun doing that. But one of the things that I did is I was like, I'm going to read one nonfiction book a year. Now, nonfiction is not something that has ever been really interesting to me. I'm not a self-help book kind of girl. They make me feel anxious. Like they just don't normally help me in a way that I think they should. In fact, I start a lot of them and then I get anxious and I stop reading them. They just have not worked for me in the past. I am not a sit down in a classroom kind of girl, learn things from I just am not a classroom person. So nonfiction books have always kind of felt like that for me, but I really felt like I would like to get more information into my life than I currently have going on. And so last year I started this process and I started with biographies. Now, I am a history, I love history. Send me to a museum that has history, fantastic. That would be super great. My mom used to have us travel all over the country and we would stop at every historical site you could think of. And I just fell in love with the history of the U.S. and the history of the United Kingdom. This is something that I've been kind of obsessed with, and Egypt too. It's just a whole thing. And so last year, I started with some biographies. I actually started with the book Spare, that is Prince William's book. And it was kind of interesting, not my favorite ever. I was kind of like, there's a really long chunk in there that I'm like, you really could have deleted this and I would have been okay. It was a very long book. And then I kind of read a couple, I read one from someone that was on the Top Chef TV show because I love that TV show. And so I read one of the people that was a contestant on there and their life story. That one, not good. I was not impressed with that one. And then I read another one about someone from another reality TV show. That one was beautiful, and I was like, it was a wonderful thing. It was from 17 Kids and Counting. I think it was Jill that wrote it. If you have any idea what I'm talking about, then we're on the same page. If you don't, it's okay. It was just a really good book. And all of a sudden, I was like, now what do I do? I looked at a couple books that I was like, oh, it'd be really interesting to read about George Washington or some of the founding fathers. And I'm telling you, they're all 20 hours long. And I was not feeling that committed to the founding fathers of the U.S. I just was not there. And so I ended up finding this random book on one of my husband's heroes, who's George Mueller. And it was a 5-hour audiobook on the life of George Mueller. And I will tell you, it was a life-changing book for me. I do not say that in a small way. I say that in it really was a life-changing book for me. First of all, because I understood my husband like I have never understood him before. We have been married for 28 years. Well, it was 27 when I read the book. But now we've been married for 28 years, and I understood him in a way that I was like, I should have read this when we first got married. It would have cleared up so much in my life. Because he has read everything that is on George Mueller. He talks about him. He preaches about him. He's done research on him. And his life of faith is just incredible. And really, it is very inspiring. So I was like, okay, this is really great. I'm going to go on to the next one of these. It has a whole series. It's written by YWAM. They're all about 5 hours each, and they're from missionaries all over the world throughout time. And so I've listened to several, and they have been really good. It has been kind of one of those times when I'm reading a book that I can just kind of settle in and go, first of all, you don't need to worry about anything weird coming up, which is really nice, which is why I listen to Cozy Mysteries, because you never like get smacked on the side of the face going, oh, I didn't see that coming. Um, but they're also so inspiring. And so I just finished my first one for 2025, and it was on Lillian Trasher. Now, I knew nothing about her. In fact, I had kind of seen her name in the Assemblies of God history. Like, I think I saw it back in that history class, but I really knew nothing about her. And so I started listening to this audiobook, and she was a single woman that ended up over in Egypt. Someone got very sick, gave her their baby, and the people that she was staying with was like, you need to leave because you can't keep this baby here. The baby's driving us crazy. And so she decides, through a bunch of different things, to start an orphanage. Only orphanage ever. The first orphanage started in Egypt. And I was just like, this is incredible. Like, I never in a zillion years would have been like, you know what? I have a baby. I should start an orphanage. Like, it was just an incredible story. But one of the things that the story is almost over, and I'm listening to kind of how she's she's got like 100 children in her orphanage, and, she's still living by faith, and there's all these pieces. She actually, because she was in Egypt, and at that time, people would come in on boats to come see the pyramids and see Egypt, right? And so she would stand at the docks with, I don't know whether it was a sign or pamphlets. I kind of forgot that part. But the idea is she stood there and she was like, come visit Egypt's largest orphanage. Now, it could have been the only orphanage at the time. There might have been a couple others started, because she does talk about that later, that some of her orphans actually start orphanages. But she stands there and brings in tourists into her orphanage, shows them a tour of the orphanage, and then they give. And they get excited about what she's doing. And I was like, okay, that is genius outside the box thinking, right? Like, I'm running an orphanage. I've got hundreds of children to feed and clothe and educate. And she has no support. And she's like, how can I do this, Lord? And she thinks outside the box, and she goes down to the docks, and every time a boat comes in, she comes and gets the tourists, brings them in, shares her heart, shows what she's doing, and they give. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is genius, right? And then I'm sitting here, and my daughter is currently taking her history class, which is being taught by me, okay? Actually, I'm not teaching it. I put together the curriculum because I had certain things I wanted her to learn. And one of the things was Men Who Built America. Now, if you've never seen the show, that's okay. You're still a good person. But Men That Built America and Food That Built America are two of my favorite history things. And I realize they're not 100% true, whatever. But they're super interesting, and they make you rethink how things worked. And so she was out last night, and she's like, hey, Mom, talking about what she's watching in this show, and, talking about Rockefeller. And it was just like, boy, first of all, that's pretty cool that you know who Rockefeller is now. It was just a very fun thing for me. It was kind of a nerdy moment. And she's talking, and she's like, Mom, I've been thinking for you, and we've been using railroads all these years. And she's like, you need to think of a pipeline. And I was like, huh? Say it again? I haven't seen these shows in a while, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? And so she talks about one of the people on this show, talk about how the railroads kind of block them from being able to transport what they want to transport, which I believe is oil. And so they're like, you know what? We're going to make a pipeline. And we're going to make that work. And they just said, we're not going to let anything stop us. We're going to think outside the box, and we're going to make this work. And she's like, every single one of these people do that. And they say, you know what? This isn't working. Let's try something else. This isn't working. Let's try something else. And so then I shared with her about Lillian Trasher. And she came up, and then later that night, she's like, Mom, let's build pipelines. And she's like, let's make it our theme this year. And I was like, okay, I got enough themes, right? But no, really, it was just one of those moments that I kind of just sat there and my TV show was paused and my daughter went off to do whatever she was going to do before she went to bed. And I sat there and I went, Lord, do I need to build pipelines? Do I need to recreate what you want me to do to get to where you want me to be? Like, have I lived inside the box of this is how it works. This is how an orphanage works. And you want me to go down and bring tourists in and get them excited about what I'm doing. And it was just one of those like, oh, I got nothing. Like, I didn't have any creative thoughts. Let's just be real. Like, nothing like downloaded into my brain and I went, oh, here's a new pipeline. Like, it was just not that. But it was a thought of so often we get caught in running things the way that looks normal to everybody else. And we have ideas that we're afraid to do. And we've talked about that a lot on this. I've talked about this a lot. But I think that someone out there needs to know that there is a better and easier way to do what you're doing. If you just take a moment and go, you know what, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to go after what God has put in my life and I'm going to do it in a new way. Now, I realize that one thing that Kevin and I have committed to in our life is to really try to be an inspiration. But one of the places that we have always talked about not talking about with people is marriage and parenting, because we are a mess in both of those areas. Like, our marriage is not a mess. We're not parent messes, but like, we do not know what we're doing. We're not professionals in any way, shape, or form in those areas, or really in many areas. But that's beside the point. Okay, let's just come back to the point. But one of the things that I'm feeling called to as I'm writing this new book that I continually am putting off and putting off and putting off is the way we have parented is not what the average person does. We have parented in a different and unique way that has been really about 100% about what God wanted Samantha to be and who God wanted Samantha to be. And we have bobbed and weaved and moved around and made mistakes, but we've done it outside the box. You know, I've talked about that people have made comments about our parenting style, especially mine, because I'm a little more loosey-goosey than the average bear, but it has worked. And I don't think I could have followed all of the quote-unquote rules of making sure that they had X amount of timeouts for X amount of ages and all those kind of things that were happening when she was a kid that just didn't feel like it worked for me. It made me feel anxious, let alone her. Like, it made me anxious. Like, whenever I'd raise my voice, she would just crumple into a ball. So raising your voice was not like something you could do. And so I had to think outside the box. And I think that in your life right now, there's an area that you are really struggling with, whether it's work or finances or a friend or a church member, or you can really be creative here, right? Like, there are areas in your life that are not working. And that's because you've been doing it the way that you've been told to do it, or a book told you to do it. And I want to encourage you to go before the Lord this week and say, you know what, Lord? This area is not working. Do you have a more creative way to do this? Do you have a new pipeline that I should be doing? Do you want me to go down to the docks and bring in tourists? Like, what do you have for me to do in this area? Because it's not working. I'm not saying go and fix everything that's not broken. That's not what I'm saying. But there are things in your life that are just not clicking. There's just something missing. And you know what that is. And I just ask you to be brave this week and go before the Lord and say, do you have a more creative way for me to be doing this? And that's what I did as a parent, and I've done in our ministry, and I've done in our marriage, and I have done almost in every part of my life. And I have to continue to do it. It doesn't stop. Like, you don't get to the point that you're like, oh, I got everything under control. It is constantly going back to the Lord and saying, Lord, this is not working the way I thought it should be working. Is it working the way you think it should be working, or should I be changing something? And being brave enough to be willing to change something that may look weird to other people, but that's how God wants you to do it, and it's going to work. So let's try something new. Let's see and bring it before the Lord and see what creative ideas He has for you. Well, that's all I have for you this week. I am excited. If you are really willing to take that problem to the Lord and say, Lord, this may not seem like a big deal to anybody else, but to you it does. And say, Lord, I need you to help me fix this, because what I'm doing right now is not working. What I'm doing in this relationship is not working. I don't know how to make this work. I need your creative download to come into my life and say, I don't know how to communicate with this person. I don't know how to fix this problem. I don't know how to do this thing in the church. And say, Lord, I need your creative ideas. And we'll see what He does. You can find me at Real Life with Jenny on Instagram, Facebook, and Be Real. You can also support this podcast by going to Buy Me a Coffee /Real Life with Jenny. That is a great place to go and make a quick donation if you want to. If you don't, it's okay. You can also go to christconnection.cc/Jen. All of my info is there to connect. I am just so excited about what God can do if you bring your problem to Him and say, Lord, what's your creative solution? And then be willing to go down to the dock and bring in the tourists. You all have a great week.